I saw my friend crumble into tears with so much fear, and I could see the raw fear.
Hi, I'm Katie.
And I'm Diane.
15 years ago, we met in rehab.
And we've been besties ever since.
We've both worked hard at healing our addictions.
And we've gone on to build meaningful lives.
I'm a licensed therapist and a yoga instructor.
And I'm an embodiment coach and Tantra healer.
When we get together, our conversations can get intense.
But they're always lively and full of surprises.
Yes!
And no topic is off limits.
And that's our show.
Hi everyone, welcome to another episode of We Can Relate.
Thrilled to be here with you.
Yes.
Be sure to like, subscribe, and share with anyone you think it might resonate with.
Yeah, today's topic is the stories we tell ourselves, of which there are.
Of which there are so many all the
Yes.
time, running in the background, conscious or not.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, why is this important?
Well, I think it's important because it can be so damaging to relationships when we are sitting there in a story in our head and we are more related to the story in our head than the actual person in front of us or the situation in front of us. And when that happens, communication completely breaks down and it can cause a lot of problems in your relationships. And I mean, we were talking about wanting to ask you guys too, if you've ever been in a story in your head that really, when you found out later, wow, that was not what was going on at all.
Particularly the ugly or reactive, huge, trigger response,
Yes.
which we'll talk more about, where that comes from. And then when you finally coming back, hopefully, maybe never, but to make repairs with this person, finding out once really digging into it of what's there, what are at the roots of this, is like, that isn't what's going on at all.
Yeah.
And how unfortunate for energy to be poured into this reality that's not reality, but is still us living out our projected wounds, traumas, sensitivities, etc.
That's exactly right. And the thing you said about it being a projection, these stories are, if they're not, connected to reality, they are just our own fears and projections and anxieties spread everywhere. And actually, we have a personal story that happened between Diane and I that we want to share with you.
Per usual.
Yeah, per usual.
Yeah. All right, Katie. So I'll let you start because this was,
Oh, this is embarrassing, but I'll tell you guys anyway. So.
Also a really beautiful moment in our friendship.
Yeah.
Of deepening,
Yeah.
which is the gift of it.
That is the gift of being able to come back and connect and work through your triggers and projections. That's the gift of the hard work. If you can do that, things will blossom. So Diane was coming to visit me. This is when we first started working on this show. And she had a situation where she was going out one night. And she doesn't live here, so she's not super familiar with this particular area in my mind.
At the time.
Yes, at the time. Now she's here. But so she was going out. She had an important meeting in the evening. Let's say it was at 8. And she was telling me, this, I have to be here and it takes me this long to get ready, so I'll be home around 6. And I knew how important it was for her to be at this meeting and not be late. This is like a big thing. So we say goodnight or goodbye because she was running out the door to do some work and I was staying home and just relaxing. And at a certain point, I'm realizing it's 6:00 and she hasn't texted me. And I'm like, and she's not home. And I'm like, well, she needed to be home in order to get ready to do this thing. And so now I start to worry.
Hook into a story.
Yeah, hook into a story, and I'm starting to worry. And so what I did was I texted her a few times, and then I didn't get a response back. And then I'm like, well, now she's supposed to be home, and I'm not getting a response back. And then I think I even called, and I had waited. I had given it like 45 minutes, I think. I was like, because I was like, she might be just taking some extra time. But then it was like an hour after she was supposed to be here. And I'm in my head, I'm terrified, and I'm thinking, like, did she get abducted in a white van to be trafficked somewhere?
Oh, not even did she. If I remember correctly, you were like, my Diane, she's only little. Like, what if somebody kidnapped her from Whole Foods in a van?
That
She's being trafficked.
That's where my head went.
They're taking her.
Yeah, I was like, she's little, and I don't know if, like, because I had just heard this story about people being trafficked or whatever. And so this is what the mind does, right? And I actually started thinking to myself after she was an hour late, like, how long do you wait before you tell the cops your friend's missing? Oh my God, it's embarrassing to admit.
It's 24
But I was I know, not 1 hour, I know. But I think it was just because of, I had really hooked into the importance of the meeting. And so anyway, yeah, so finally I got some messages back.
Yeah, well, as I was rounding the corner about 30 seconds from her house, all of this unbeknownst to me. And, you know, one of the things we talk about this difference that we've really discovered in this project, particularly, but differences between Katie and I is she finds a sense of safety in her body or like grounding with containment. She likes to be on time. She likes to know the plan. We hold to the plan. And I'm more of like a Lucy. I find safety. I'm very attached to my sense of personal freedom. And this comes into play of the disconnect and non-relatedness, the rupture. So I'm like running errands. I have no idea. I'm out and about. I'm on a walk. I'm sniffing the flowers. I'm twirling in the breeze. And so I come around and I keep my phone on silent at all times unless it's really time sensitive. And that's been a great mental health tip if possible. But so I'm like, okay, I'll just pull out. And it had been the extra time and I knew that. But what Katie didn't know was my time had just, the thing I was going to just got bumped out an hour. So I was like, sweet, I can go twirl in the breeze and sniff the flowers for another hour. So I took my sweet time and it did not even occur to me to let Katie know because it wasn't direct plan. Like my evening plans had nothing to do with Katie and we'd kind of, wrapped for the day. And so I'm just out there living my life and just no consciousness that it might affect you at all. So then I pull out my phone and I'm rounding the corner almost at Katie's door and it's these things and I can kind of see the escalation in the text.
Escalation? Like what's she talking about?
Girl, we're about to get to background. So I look at the phone and I get this like cloud over me of like, oh fuck. One of my triggers that takes me into lizard primordial brain real quick is feeling in trouble when I feel like I've done nothing wrong. My defensiveness comes in. Like, what the is this?
And they weren't, I don't think, as I remember, they weren't mean texts. It was just like, are you okay? Are you coming back? Or like,
yeah, well, I think it was like something like, why aren't you answering? Like, I
maybe said, yeah, I'm getting anxious or I feel worried or something.
But again, that, like, for you, a threat to, like, what feels safe is too much lack of boundaries or lack of containment. And for me, what came up was like, I don't need you to.
Yeah, I mean, you're an adult, and like, and it's so. I mean, we'll get to all this.
This is the clash of the stories. So then I'm like, oh shit. So I'm already getting a little activated of like, why do you even what? And go ahead.
No.
Well, so then I open the door, and as I remember it, I'm already like, oh god, I'm gonna be in trouble. And I open the door, not prepared for this side of Katie that I honestly had never seen and gratefully have never seen since. But all of a sudden, and this is how I remember it, was she's sitting on the couch, like perched, whole tense body. And I go,
scared, don't yell.
I know, I won't this time. Are you okay? Jeez. Exorcism style, like, it was like backdraft of like, what the, like,
I mean, I was not that, for me, like, I was just like, no, I'm not okay. Like, I think there's a little exaggeration.
Well, you were foaming at the mouth is how I remember it for sure.
It was like, a light foam.
In a rabid state
little
of
foam.
Dysregulation.
I was scared. My friend was in a van. She was going to, like, I don't know where the fuck they take these people.
First you got real angry and then started to cry. But, so I come in and I'm like, your anger immediately ups the ante for me of the mutual trigger, which at that point nobody's hearing anymore because Now I'm like, you're not my mom. I didn't come here to have a mom. I don't need to tell you. Like, my time just got extended. It's been an hour. What's an hour anyways? Like,
what even is time?
What even is time? Like, I'm not, because my sense of freedom felt infringed upon, and I felt like I hadn't done anything. The defensiveness.
And you were thinking, you thought you did something wrong, or I was saying you did something wrong, and really underneath it, I was just scared. I was just scared for my friend. She hadn't told me it was going to be another hour. Yeah. She had told me when she was coming back. And I think for me, this is something I'm working on, but sometimes people say things and they don't mean exactly what they say, or it's an idea for them, and that's okay, but I'll take it like, okay, this is what we are doing, or this is what's happening. And so I think it was kind of this, what you're saying, this breakdown of, I'm telling myself a story, right? We're taking it back to the topic of my friends, some were being trafficked. Okay, yeah.
And with every passing minute,
it got worse.
Because once you're hooked into a story, we start case building layer by layer of, definitely the trick, escalated. So by the time I got back, I was definitely out and being human trafficked.
Yes.
It wasn't just like, we're running a little behind.
Yeah, no, it wasn't like that for me.
Yeah.
And, I've learned a lot from that, actually. But yeah, I think, and I'm wondering if you all can relate to a time when you felt really scared and you got triggered, and instead of being able to show like your vulnerability, or it comes out as anger, it comes out as some other type of energy, because you're so worried.
Well, and I think, correct me if I'm wrong, part of what was going on was the continued story of not just I'm off and I've been abducted, but how, if that's not the case, how could she have not even
let me know?
She didn't answer the phone. I've been,
she's
the feeling dropped.
Me. Yeah. Oh, now she's always on her phone. She's probably ignoring me. She must have seen my text and she doesn't care. So this was another story. She doesn't care that I'm worried.
Which I think is the deeper
issue.
Like, I'm so scared for you, and you can't even pick up your phone.
Yes.
Which all of this, and to be truthful, one of the things that we've learned in staying in relatedness is learning, okay, Katie receives love as more containment than is like usually my edge and my capacity. So how can I honor that, and to the best of my ability,
while still honoring yourself? Yeah,
meet that, and being like, hey, almost there, parking, or hey, just communicating, and beyond what normally I might otherwise, but because that feels really good to you, and you've been really great about validating growth. So.
Yeah, and my work then with Diane has tried to be more, relax a little bit around time and boundaries, and trust that if she's not around, she's off smelling the flowers, and like we'll so we try to kind of respect our different wiring now. Yeah. And that's been really helpful.
Well, and if you think about it, what's the function of this? The function of these stories, it's we get activated and triggered. There's generally, there's a saying, I don't know who said it, but if it's hysterical, it's historical. And it's like, so somewhere in the body, there's a something that's still got vibrations, and it comes to the surface. And back then it was designed to try to keep you safe.
Yeah.
And protect you. And for me, it's like that's what learning to feel safe in my body was. So it's trying to protect us.
Yes.
Unfortunately, if it's based in projection of some sort, and we're not meeting the actual relationship and in relatedness, then we're going back and responding, or not responding, reacting instead of responding to something way back then. And when we're in that state, we literally can't hear each other anymore.
Yeah, and I think that brings us to the point where, I was on the couch, and I can get myself out of states that I'm in. It's usually something I can do, but I think because it had been an hour of me worrying and building this up in my head, and it sort of happened subtly, and then by the time it's like the lobster in the pot. By the time it was time to, she came back, I was really upset. And so I couldn't get out of what I was in, and that's a trauma response. And what you did that was so helpful and nurturing for the relationship was she was able to put aside her strong feelings, which I wasn't able to do at the time, and meet my feelings first. And when we can do that, that really is healing, because, you know, if one person is able, what was that quote?
Yeah, there's a quote that I love. And originally, and again, I don't know who said it or where I heard it first, but it was, who wins a fight? The person that gets to God first. For me personally, God more, and maybe to be more universally relatable, God, Goddess, Creator, Universe, like whoever gets to, and really, love, relatedness. And so I like to say, you know, who wins a fight? The person that gets to love first. The person that gets back to relatedness, that can come back, be regulated, hold the compassion.
Getting out of the ego.
Yeah, prioritizing unity, relatedness over defense, being oppositional. You know, because it didn't matter. What happened, you were angry and I bowed up and was, oh, you're not my mom. But then you collapsed into a guttural cry, and which makes it easier to soften. It's tough when you're facing anger or defense. But I saw my friend crumble into tears with so much fear, and I could see the raw fear. And I looked at my friend, and immediately I was like, this doesn't matter enough. Like I didn't do anything wrong, or like the reality for me, the truth is that I never would mean to hurt my friend or be thoughtless. And that wasn't my intention, but also true at the same time, the reality was I did hurt my friend. She did feel dropped. And it's not about anybody being wrong, but that's what matters is, okay, how can I tend to my friend? How can I be there for you? And also, what do I know of my friend? I know she loves me. Like, she isn't trying to chokehold my freedom.
No,
like
I want her to be free.
Yeah.
I love that you can do that. I want that for you. That's your nature.
Yeah.
Like, I want that for you.
Yeah. And so it becomes this, okay, what do I know about my friend? She's not actually trying to suffocate or oppress me. And actually, like, I stopped. I was in my activation, and I said, inwardly, I said, Diane, look at your friend. Look how much she's hurting right now. Set yourself aside. Tend to her. And I came over to you, and I crouched down. She was on the couch, and I crouched down at eye level. And I did by now I have chills, because it was such a potent, powerful, beautiful experience, ultimately.
Yeah.
Legitimate suffering.
Yeah.
When we can learn and grow from it. And worth it. So I crouched down at eye level, and I looked Katie right in the face, and I said, I love you. I see you. I understand you're really scared right now, and this is hard. I do need to get going, but we're going to be okay. We will come back to this, and it's going to be all right. And just really, like, I love you, and just meeting you, even physically at eye level of, like, I am right here. You're scared. I'm sorry for anything I did that damaged us or caused this pain in you.
Yeah. And the ability to say you're sorry when you really haven't done anything wrong is something that's kind of beautiful, because I think one thing that you did in that moment was heal something in me. Like I was on the couch, and I told her, we've talked about this story before, and I told her just with each other how, you know, I could literally feel something inside of me just soften. Like I was in the defense, the reaction, the trauma,
and it's a bind. It's literally you contract,
and you can't move. Like there's sometimes you just can't get yourself out of these things.
Yeah.
And this makes me think of complexes, which I can't wait till we get into that topic, because it's going to be a juicy one. But, you know, I was taken over, and she was able to break through that and meet the feelings first. And that's one of our tips and purposes for sharing this story in this episode with you, is because if in your relationships you can meet someone's feelings first, and you know, a lot of times in relationships people will say, well, I have feelings, and the other person will go, well, I have feelings too. Right. And it's like, of course, you're both allowed to have feelings, but my suggestion would be that you tend to whoever brought up their feelings first and trust that there will be time to tend to your partner's, your friend's feelings also. Because if you're both saying, I feel something, guess what? It just becomes another positional thing.
Right.
And we're not actually no one's being willing to meet the feelings.
And nobody's really listening. And I love what you said. You said, there's a quote, another one I'm bringing on today. Listen more. People begin to heal the moment they feel heard. And that, I get chills still, like that shift in you. What a beautiful gift of staying in relatedness, getting vulnerable, seeing, listening, holding space for. And at no point did I say I was wrong or bad or did the wrong thing. That wasn't the point. The point was, I'm sorry I hurt you. And that's very different than being like, I'm sorry you feel that way. It was, I actually hurt you, and I can be accountable for that simultaneously while recognizing my intentions were well-meaning and I wasn't bad or wrong. It's not about who's right, who's wrong. There's space for all of it, and your feelings matter, and there's room. I would never want to silence you. If there's something here, one of my tips and tools would be, if you have people in your life that in general, if you scan the facts first, as able, when triggered, being able to notice the activation in the body. This is one I repeat a lot as a somatic embodiment practitioner, and just really going into body wisdom, like, oh, for me, I get it like in my solar plexus of like, ooh, heat. I'm activated, and it's like, okay, how can I move that vibration, that energy, and start dissipating it through my being of like, maybe it's grounding, whatnot, to just try to work on physically regulating the nervous system and coming into a more centered state. But then, okay, what are the facts I know about this person? If you have somebody in your life that in general you feel pretty regulated and safe to be your authentic self, then start practicing these things, meeting the edge, meeting the capacity, saying the vulnerable thing. We might not be there all the way, because this is like building muscle. But to the best of our ability, being like, oh, this is hard, but I'm going to take the risk because staying in relatedness with you is the priority.
And it matters.
And what do I know about Katie is I said, look at your friend. What do I know? She loves me. She cares deeply. And so...
And I'm not typically an alarmist either.
No.
So I think you must have known that something had me,
Clearly. And so being able to reach, and so what a gift of in this relatedness, co-healing, co-regulating, like really starting to uproot with someone safe and have the experience of uprooting and rewiring some things from that historical wounded place of, there's something there, but let me support you in being somebody that holds the space and accepts you and meets you there.
Yeah, and I think, that's so beautiful. And I think one of the things you mentioned that was healing for you was realizing, oh, if I go missing, I actually have someone who is going to notice. It's like, yeah, okay, I noticed too soon, fine. But like, I'm going to notice. She matters to me. And that when we can peel away all the defenses and we can get into these, the true things underneath are like, we care about each
facts.
other. Yeah.
What are the friendly facts? Is one of my best. These are just the friendly facts. I remember that was such a beautiful thing, realizing like, and I think I said to you even before I left, like, thank you for loving me so much that you want to contain and make sure I'm safe, and that I wouldn't go off the edge of the earth and not be noticed. And that healed a beautiful thing in me that, like a core wound of just feeling disposable and like inconsequential to the people that shouldn't be the case. And that's been again, maybe a story I told myself, but that was the wound and the experience.
That was the wound. And
even if not true.
That's right. And I love what you had said previously about just the holding of both. I think it takes a big person to be able to say, I'm sorry I hurt you. And while simultaneously knowing you didn't mean to hurt the person. And I wanted to bring it to all of you and ask you, have you ever been hurt by somebody, and all you really wanted from them was just to be able to say, like, I'm so sorry I hurt you.
Yeah.
And they couldn't because well, I didn't mean to hurt you. Oh, well, you did this. And it's like that defensiveness, which we are going to do an episode on more deeply. So stay tuned for that. But that defensiveness is so destructive. And so I just want to say thank you for being able to do that. And
yeah. And there's times where the trigger is so high, it can, particularly it's hard when trigger meets trigger. The reactivity meets reactive. Well, because again, it's the non-hearing. And there's just such softening. Whose heart and share, but like doesn't soften at least a bit if or when somebody could say, I'm sorry I hurt you.
Yes.
Your feelings matter. I hear you. I see you. Is there more? That would be a tip of mine. Like you said, not interrupting, or, you know, there will be time for you later, and take care of yourself by asking or advocating for that. But right now I want to hear and make sure I got this right.
Yes.
Did I hear that correctly? What do you need? Do you feel complete? Is there more? What a lovely thing.
And loving thing to say, I have space for you. I have space for
all
you.
of you is welcome here, even if I disagree, or even if it...
Yes.
Yeah, all of you.
Yes.
Yeah, I just said to somebody the other day, actually earlier today, you're allowed to be mad at me. It's okay. You can be mad at me, and I can hold space for that and do my best to still meet you there. And what an amazing, because a lot of us are like, oh, I'm not allowed to be angry, or shame comes in. And so, were you going to say more?
So much of these things we bring to our relationships are also huge pieces of inner work, which is why when Diane gives you the tip to really try to study self-regulation, try to learn how to move energy, and I give you ideas about how to work with yourself, it's really, that's the work, right? Because when we can self-regulate and work with ourselves, we have more capacity to not be in our defenses.
And have the kind of connections, as far as I know, most of us long
Really
for, that are meaningful, safe, where we are free to be our most radiant, authentically expressed selves, for better and worse. Like, I don't have to hide the ugly from you, like I thought I did from the world. Like, what a healing, beautiful thing. And it's that, okay, and maybe it's taking some space and being like, I am so in a trigger or activated right now, I cannot even hear you. I want to hear you. I'm going to go, but I will be back. Make sure to say that piece. But that, let me come back when I'm in a more centered space, and then go and maybe move that energy by stomping, rage, scribbling, whatever it is, to just get it out in the least harmful way possible, or most constructive way. So, yeah.
Yeah, and I think one of the other points I wanted to bring in actually was a quote, and I wanted just to say something about it, was by Henry Winkler, who played, he was the Fonz, right?
Fonz, yeah.
The Fonz. He said, assumptions are the termites of relationships. And I really liked that, because it's so true. The termites, like when you think of a termite, it eats away and destroys a house. And that's what assumptions
foundation.
do. That and stories are assumptions or projections, and those are eating away at the relationship itself. And
At the core. It gets to the core, and it can create a whole collapse. I mean, tell us about it. Do you have people in your life where it's built so big of feeling unheard, unmet, non-accepted in differences, or projected stories onto, that the relatedness can't happen, and having to go full on no contact because there's just no room here, you know, because the termites, as Henry Winkler said, have gotten to the foundation, and it's just, there's nothing left. You and I speak a lot into clearing the debris along the way. Another tip would be, it's really effective. We've started to say to each other, so the story I'm telling myself is, and checking it out in real time the best we're able to, because the thing about this debris or the infestation of the termites, it's this case building. It's not maybe just in the trigger, but if we hadn't cleared that, if either of us had swallowed and just stuffed and repressed, that stuff accumulates and is exactly that. That's what the stories.
That's right. And
You
we
know?
were also talking about ways this happens on a subtler level, but still happens. And one of the things was I had brought up a debris thing today because she was telling me, oh, this is what I'm doing for my birthday and this is for Halloween. And I said, you know, I had feelings come up, and I'm finally I've improved, and I know when I have feelings come up, and I'm like, okay, there's something here. Well, maybe I could ask her about it. Okay. So I asked her, I said, you know, I thought we had made a plan to do this. And so when you told me you're doing this, I kind of, it threw me, and I said, but I'm realizing maybe for you, it wasn't a plan and, you know, plan to go out. And in my head, you know, I had been thinking, should I ask her about like what we're doing for Halloween, like costumes, but I had never communicated that.
Yeah.
And she had her own story going
Yeah,
on.
and this is the stuff. Like, okay, there's the really active, you know, moving
big
into a
stuff.
trauma response of like shutdown, and collapse. But there's also just these little sneaky gremlins, like that are way more subconscious. Because I didn't realize I was in a story until you wonderfully came and were like, I have a debris thing. And it was like, oh gosh, okay. And it wasn't contentious at all. We just talked it through, and I said, oh my gosh, thank you for sharing with me that you took it as we have plans, and I took it as talking possible, you know, potentials. And what happened for me is I think because we weren't talking about it, and like I want this particular, it's a milestone birthday. Birthdays are very sacred to me, not just mine, but everyone's. It's like personal holiday. Anyways, this is a particularly special one to me. And I went into the fear of like, oh, if she really wanted to do it, we would have talked about it by now. We would have planned epic costumes. And so she probably doesn't really want to. And I don't want to pressure her. And especially for this important birthday. Here's the story. I had no idea this was running in the background until we started dialoguing. And in relatedness. And I was like, oh gosh, I went into this whole, and you didn't go into defending. We just talked about it.
We just
I was
talked about it.
Oh, I was like, well, I mean, if it was important, and I don't want to make you feel bad if it's just not that important. If it's not your thing, you don't want to go, that's fine. I can take care of myself. So I did this whole thing without talking and rerouted and was like, well, if it's not that special to you, I don't want to feel like dropped or down on this important birthday. So I'm going to just, instead of risk being disappointed or, you know, I'm going to just take care of myself, and I'm going to go and rent an Airbnb for a couple days in nature and go hike and self-ceremony and like, blah, but, and I was a little sad that we weren't going to do things, but this whole story went on without being like, hey.
How do you even make nature sound sexy? I love you.
As a queen does.
As one does. Scorpio, Virgo here.
Tantra
But no,
priestess.
to tie this all back in, what I thought was interesting is how the story she had and the story I had about I should talk to her they're all the stories that are in our heads. Neither the two shall meet.
Yeah.
And it's like, that's the whole issue. I mean, there's another episode we did recently on unilateral decision making.
Yeah.
And this is sort of a sister or brother to that. So if you like this discussion, definitely go check that one out, because it really is all the stuff we keep in here, and that can be, not always, but can be really damaging.
Well, yeah. And for me, I wasn't even upset with you. I'm just like, oh, okay, well, I don't want to, not realizing I don't want to be needy. I don't want to be a burden, all of my stuff, but just, that's okay. You don't have to come. Like, in the meantime, it's still kind of harming the relationship. I'm so glad you brought it up. And then all of a sudden I was like, well, why did I do that? Oh, because these are the stories I was telling myself.
Yeah.
So again, the more we can be accountable and responsible for our own work, our own sensitivities, our own triggers, and they don't have to have that charge. It's like, let's get compassionately curious and be like, wow, what was operating here?
Yeah, that's why reminds me of the quote I had, the Jung quote I had that says, small and hidden is the door that leads inward, and the entrance is barred by countless prejudices, mistaken assumptions, and fears. And what I love about this is...
I always like when because I hear it and I go, ooh, but then I digest it, body, somatically absorb it when you repeat. So for everybody else, let's listen.
Okay. So small and hidden is the door that leads inward, and the entrance is barred by countless prejudices, mistaken assumptions, and fears. And what I love about that is those stories are that, right? And those stories do that to ourselves, the stories we tell ourselves about ourselves, and they often do that with others. And so if we can know that the doors are surrounded by these assumptions
Armor.
and fears and prejudices, well, what can we do? We can work on those. And then we can clear that door, and it can be more of an aligned, clear relationship.
I love that.
Yeah.
Snaps. Juicy. Yes.
Good stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and I
Good
love it because I
stuff.
think of it as armor. And again, even in the subtleties and more unconscious story that just there's what was trying to protect you of my friend and I feel drawn. There was that of feeling wounded, but even in the subtler story, it comes from a place of wanting to feel safe. My fear was that I was going to have a disappointing birthday. My fear was that saying much about it might be a drag for my friend, too much, which is, and so it's this, it's this accountability and owning our part. And, one of the other tips I would have would be to say, so how can we do this better? And in terms of action, like what would feel loving to you? What would feel supportive? And then can I do that? And that was what we did this morning. I was like, okay, so how about this? When we're percolating, and because I get really carried away with exciting ideas, like, oh, thanks. And then I'm off into the twirly winds.
Yes.
But you've held on to it as actual plans. And so a way to be supportive is, okay, how about when we're talking about, these things, we check in of, okay, do you think this is like something that we're thinking about, or is this, are we
Actual
committing?
plan. Yeah. And I think, I think my wounding or my hurt is that in my mind, and this is the hurt me talking, is like, well, we've talked about this. You even said it was important. You were like, I'm so glad you want to do that because it's so important to me. And we don't go out or dress up and do all that fun stuff that much. And so I'm like, so to me, I took that as, oh, okay, she's glad that I want to do it. So it's definitely a plan. And we didn't clarify that. So that's how I took it. But my wounding is like when she comes in then and says like, oh, I'm doing this other thing, it's like I just feel like completely forgotten and abandoned. And like, oh, I guess I didn't mean that much. She was all excited, but really it was just a lie. And it's not that. And I know it's not that. But this is the importance of bringing our wounding in so that there's a chance for healing.
And creating a safe container in the relationship for all of it to be here, your stuff, because mine came in, again, it came in as these various things. And really it was just that we hadn't talked about it in a few weeks. And then I started getting anxious that it was And what I wish I would have done instead was, instead of being like, coming in and being like, hey, because part of it too was like, I would really love to go be in nature and by myself, amazing, to celebrate my life and call in this new decade. What I wish I would have done is just communicated that to my friend, and actually now we're looking at it of, instead of going over days that include Halloween, bumping it out so there's room for possibly both. But it didn't have to be, I made a unilateral choice. And I didn't check in, and I didn't even think to, because I was already convinced that it didn't matter.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nor did I. I didn't check in either. So, so was there anything else? I think for me, I feel complete.
I do feel complete around it. I feel like it's a solid one.
All right.
So, if you related to this, if that connected with you, we invite you to check out other episodes that are kind of branches of this, which would be, as mentioned, unilateral decision making, which is what I wish I hadn't done in my subconscious state. And then also legitimate versus illegitimate suffering, because this would be an example of, we had this rupture and it was in the moment, it felt really scary. But we actually built muscle in how to love each other better, how to be more related, and it deepened our friendship. So that is legitimate pain, suffering, because we were like, how can we grow from this? How can we move it forward?
Yeah.
So
I love
anything
that.
more from you, Katie?
No, I guess just we'd love to hear if you have any stories of your own around the stories you've told yourself, or if someone else told themselves a story about you, and you know, big or small, how does it affect you? Let us know.
And how did you deal? Where are you at now? We always want to hear it all.
Yes.
So thanks for tuning in. Be sure to like, subscribe, and share if you relate.
Bye.
Bye.